Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. A new technology could be the next big tool in the conversation about school safety. A company wants to put surveillance cameras on school campuses to work to detect guns before they make it through the doors. WRAL Investigates Sarah Krueger got a demonstration of how it works. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, who is this company?
So the company is called OmniAlert, and it uses artificial intelligence to detect guns. So according to the company, it's in use at churches and businesses and stadiums, but a big market is schools. And a couple big school systems have recently signed on to using OmniAlert, including Charles County, Maryland, and Nashville, Tennessee. And the way it works is it uses existing security cameras. So it ties in with those and monitors the videos frame by frame to detect guns, and then it immediately issues a notification if one is found. So, depending on how the company or the school has it set up, that could notify an immediate alert to law enforcement, which would even include a photo from the camera, or it could trigger immediately locking all of the doors or something like that. So, this technology works by using AI to recognize the shape of a gun. And what's interesting about this technology is it uses very little new hardware because it relies on the cameras a building already has. And also, there's a person, multiple people vetting all of these back in a command center in real time to try to reduce any false readings. And the director of artificial intelligence.
I'm Chad Green. I joined the company back in 2019. I had been working for a defense contractor for many years. I worked on active protection systems for military vehicles.
He was inspired to join the company and work on this after one of his relatives was killed in the Sandy Hook school shooting in Connecticut.
My cousin's daughter was killed in that shooting, and it was sort of an Apollo 13 moment for me where I'm like, hey, there's a crisis, something needs to be done. So I started working on some image classification threat detection methods similar to what I've been using for the military.
It's a very personal story there to the passion behind this technology and really the desire to get it in use by more schools.
And how common are security cameras on school campuses, since those are really important to how this works?
So, from what I've seen, they're very common. I mean, I don't know an exact percentage, but it seems like just about every school I've been to has some kind of camera, both inside and outside the school. So, those cameras, those are the basic tools that are needed to then get OmniAlert off the ground. If you have a camera, then you could get OmniAlert.
And you think about the task of a human to stare at multiple video screens each day and be alert and aware and ready for the fraction of a second that a weapon shows up in a video feed. On average, humans can only stare at a video feed for about 20 minutes before they completely get distracted or unable to focus. So to have to watch 100 video feeds at a school, for example, is just an impossible task. So we can take the video feeds that are already present and use OmniAlert's gun detect software to monitor each frame of each video feed in real time. So we can take 30 frames per second of every single camera in the school and enable that security officer to be able to monitor effectively all the cameras at the same time, because they only get the messages from the one camera that actually detects a weapon.
And how is this use of AI compare to ones we've been talking about in recent years? I think about those evolved detectors that have really started to move into schools in our state.
Yeah, so Evolve is a weapons detector, a kind of weapons detector, and that is a physical structure that someone has to walk through, much like a metal detector. And that's more designed to detect weapons that are out of plain view. So a couple of differences here. OmniAlert is designed to detect guns and only guns, so not any other kind of weapons, not knives, nothing like that. And also, it only is designed to detect visible guns, so guns that are drawn, not guns that are holstered because they didn't want it to go off with a school resource officer or, a police officer entering the building. In their eyes, in the company's eyes, a gun in a threatening manner. So a gun that's drawn is what they really wanted to pick up on. So really the idea here is that this technology would be most useful wired into cameras that are outside of a school building, that show the parking lot, that show, the lead up to the various doors or the front entrance. And we know a lot of mass school shootings, the gun is already visible by the time the shooter is approaching the school. So they're not trying to be subtle about this. These shooters are coming into the parking lot, removing the guns from their car, whatever, and walking straight up to the school with the gun already brandished.
Let's say, for example, at Sandy Hook, the shooter showed up to the front of the school, parked in front of the school, went to the back of the car, pulled out his rifle, and then walked directly up to the front door. The weapon fully visible. We could detect at that point, before they even make it into the school, immediately initiate a lockdown procedure, close the doors, get lights and signs going, get the police aware of what's going on. The police would get an image, several images, as well as a video clip of what we detected, so that they have context of what's going on when they arrive at the school. They would know what the shooter looks like, what type of weapons he or she is carrying. All of that information just allows them to be better prepared when they show up.
And this is designed to prevent those types of situations.
Well, we're going to take a quick break right there and we'll be right back. Sarah, before the break, you were explaining a little bit about how this technology works. What did you learn from the demonstration that you saw?
It was interesting to see that the AI could detect not only guns, but it could also identify some other common objects that you would see frequently at a school, like cell phones. So it wouldn't alert on those, but it would note, hey, I see a cell phone, and it would put, a box around that, and the technology would show you that's a phone versus that's a gun. It was also interesting to see in real time how it did not detect holstered weapons, like we mentioned, only weapons that were drawn, and it seemed to be, very accurate in that from the brief demonstration that we were given at a company in Raleigh.
And where is this technology already being used? I think you mentioned some school districts in other states.
Yeah, so school districts in Nashville and Maryland are two of the big ones that have recently signed on to this. And when I talked to OmniAlert, they also mentioned it's used in some major stadiums and also at churches and businesses. So really anywhere that has a camera could be a contender for it. But again, it seems like schools is the big one that they're focusing on right now, where they think this could really make a difference.
And if a school district in our area were to put this in place, how much would it cost them to do that?
Yes. So first, I should say I did ask the company, hey, are there any schools in North Carolina, either private or public, that are using this? And of course, for a public school system, we would likely already know about it because this would have been approved in some kind of a public meeting and there would be public records, not necessarily the case for a private school. The company wouldn't comment on exactly where this is in use. They did say that there are schools in North Carolina that are planning to use the technology, but because of client privacy, they didn't want to go into more specifics than that. But in terms of the cost, it starts at $1,000 per camera per year. And then the price goes down, they said, for each camera you add after that. So that's a lot cheaper than some of the other technologies on the market that are in the six-figure range, but of course, it is a very niche thing that it does. And the school safety expert I interviewed for part of the story, as well as the company, they say really it works best when it's coupled and paired with other technologies and other strategies. It's not supposed to solve the whole problem of school violence on its own, but it's supposed to get at least one piece of it.
Right. I feel like that's something I've heard talked about a lot when we talk about school safety. This sort of like it's a piece of Swiss cheese. Like you have to have several layers of protection in order to make school safer. So you could conceivably, maybe it's you have something like this, but then you also maybe have the school scanners or you have other means of protection too.
Yeah, and one thing that OmniAlert talked about is that this technology can be used with Evolve and, apparently is often used with Evolve. So they have a way to work together and they kind of play off each other in a good way, because evolve is more something, it's like once you're inside the school, you go through this, versus OmniAlert is really focusing on outside the school. So, they can work hand in hand.
And what do you think that this technology says about the direction that the school security conversation is going right now?
I think the idea that this is a big puzzle and that there are so many pieces of the puzzle that we'll need to try to get to make it a whole and well-rounded approach. Common concern often talked about all the school safety measures is a concern that students will feel overly surveilled, or like they're in a more militant environment, the more things they have to walk through and the more monitoring devices. And to that end, although we've talked about the limitations of OmniAlert, that it certainly is a very niche thing that it does, it is unobtrusive and invisible. Even you can see, of course, there's a camera. You can't see the OmniAlert associated with that camera. So to that end, critics who are worried about that over militarization of school environment, at least this is something that is, not visible in an added sense beyond the cameras that so many places already have.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And if you've listened to this podcast on WRAL.com or the WRAL News app, you can find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Thank you for listening.